Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for coming to our session today, the Summit for Democracy. We are proud to partner with the Summit for Democracy in this panel titled Youth in Policy, Ensuring Representation and Impact. We are thankful to the over 70 democratic states who made this possible. We are thankful to the OECD, to IDEA International, and to the government of Korea for hosting us. We are proud to be organizing this session for two reasons. The first one is that we believe that summits like this one, events like this one, are extremely important to safeguard democracy. We live in a geopolitical paradigm in which you have authoritarian countries, populist leaders working together to undermine the values that all of us believe in. You have authoritarian governments working together on their shared diplomatic agenda, on ways to overcome sanctions from the West, on ways to advance their authoritarian narrative and ideas. So for us to safeguard democracy and to protect our way of living, we need to also work together, which is why this initiative is so important. We were specifically interested in organizing this session because we also believe that in order to protect democracy, we need young people at the center of policy decision and political processes. This means that young people need to be included and included in real ways. We need to have concrete mechanisms for young people so that they can actually influence the future of our societies. This is essential for two reasons. The first reason is that in order for young people to believe in democracy, in order for young people to understand democracy, they need to be involved in the process. They need to feel represented. They need to feel that their aspirations, that their challenges, and that their ideas are included in the decisions taken by their governments. They need to feel that the system is truly working for them. So that's the first thing. The second thing that we truly believe is that for us to have quality public policies, for us to have good public policies, we need to have the interest of the young people involved in these policies. If we have members of parliament, if we have politicians, if we have policymakers who are making decisions, and all of them are close to retirement age, then the policies that they will deliver will not serve the young people. So for that reason, we believe that the young people need to be included. The organization that we represent is called the Organization for Economic Inclusion. We believe in safeguarding democracy through economic inclusion and opportunity. We believe that for people to support democracy, they need to feel economically included. And we have three areas of focus that we're working really hard to make happen. The first one, we believe in a universal right to banking for all people. All people deserve a right to a bank account, especially people from marginalized communities, people from immigrants, for example, or human rights activists who are often attacked by authoritarian regimes, even when they are in exile. Many people in the developed world, many immigrants, they cannot open bank accounts because of bad regulations. We need to find ways to overcome these regulations. And for this reason, we made a policy proposal in the Council of Europe, which is now formally a motion for resolution, thanks to the support of over 20 members of parliament in Europe. Because all immigrants, especially from countries like mine, Venezuela, we deserve to be economically included. We deserve to be productive members of society. This is good for them, for the people, and this is also good for their host countries. So this is something that we're working really hard, and if somebody wants to join and collaborate, we're very grateful for doing so. The second thing that we're working extremely hard to get is to put young people at the center of policy decisions, which is why we are organizing this panel, which in fact, this panel at the Summit for Democracy is the first one that we organized since our organization only has less than 2 months since we founded it. After some meetings that we had in Washington, some meetings that we had in Brussels, and some meetings that we had in Madrid. So we're doing this panel. We're also organizing a panel at the Italian Congress. We're organizing sessions on the Council of Europe. And we, for example, organized a session at the State Department a month ago, a private session on the use of technology to advance democracy. The third area of work that we're really focused on is on the uses of technology to advance democracy, on the uses of Bitcoin to advance democracy. Something that many people do not understand in developed countries is that Bitcoin, for us, for human rights activists, is not an investment mechanism, it's not a tool for speculation. For us, it's a human rights tool. Bitcoin in authoritarian places is the way activists have to finance their activities. Is the way that they can survive despite all the amount of financial repression that government impose against them. So without further ado, I will introduce the members of our panel. I will begin with Rafa. Rafa will talk to us about what he's doing in Guatemala. Rafa is safeguarding democracy through technology. He's the president of Simple Proof, which is a technology used to safeguard elections. So please, I will begin with Rafa.
Thank you, Jorge. So yeah, my name is Rafa Cordon. I come all the way from Guatemala. Very happy to be for the first time in Korea, and happy to be able to share my experience here at the Summit for Democracy. And so I prepared a very brief statement. It's evident that over the past decade, democratic principles and institutions are facing mounting challenges. They're being threatened from different attack vectors. For example, disinformation campaigns on social media orchestrated by foreign organizations and corrupt actors aim to undermine trust in election results. Simultaneously, social media corporations build algorithms that prioritize engagement over truth. Recent advancements in AI, and that has been a general topic in this summit. These recent advancements in AI will exacerbate the issue by enabling the easy creation of fake information that appears real, disseminated by fake people who seem real. In a couple of years, we won't be able to tell if I'm real unless I'm standing in front of you, like over a Zoom call or any type of digital interchange. Fake generative AI will enable these deep fakes where you can't really tell if a person is real or if you're just interacting with an AI. However, social media also provides a platform for political activists to rapidly spread their message and their ideas and create compelling messages that can reach millions of people. We've seen this in democracies all over the world. And activists who seem to come out of nowhere can now compete and win elections against traditional candidates with deep pockets. Such unexpected results that may happen can shock the governing establishment, triggering a response of election denial or straight-up weaponization of judiciary systems. And this is orchestrated by those who stand to lose the most by a change in the status quo. Part of the defense of democracy is about building a transparent election process that people trust. The perception of legitimacy of power in a democratic republic is underpinned by this process. And I always say, democracy is just about the power to elect new leaders as it is about the power to peacefully remove leaders we no longer want. If you fail to defend democracy, we may risk losing this power, potentially never to regain it. And young people, traditionally the agents of paradigm changes, must fight to strengthen democracy in the face of these new threats. For example, I've seen, I'm not young, I'm 40 years old, but I've seen young people understand, for example, Bitcoin faster than older folks because they do not need to break down established belief systems and frameworks like we do. In order to understand Bitcoin myself, I had to go back to what I learned in middle school decades ago and sort of update my explanation of what money is. Concepts like open source, decentralization, and immutability are ideas that I did not grow up with, but are being learned now at a very early age, along with a core mantra: don't trust, verify. We hear that all the time now. So during elections, we need to safeguard the most critical documents in a transparent manner as soon as they are produced, rendering them immune to tampering. By safeguarding these documents, we can agree on a common ground or raw material that will be the input to determine who wins an election. These documents should also be available to the public in real time in order for any citizen to be able to audit the process as it happens. Just like we're used to consuming digital information in real time, we should be able to consume information on elections in real time. And as democracy faces threats on multiple fronts, we need to update our elections processes to enable real-time information combined with what I would call radical transparency and trustless verification in order to upgrade the systems the election processes that we have right now. Fortunately, we already have the tools and protocols that enable this. Coupled with leadership and activism from young voices who understand technology and the power of decentralization, this can become a reality. Let me tell you what happened in Guatemala. So the Supreme Electoral Tribunal that organizes elections in Guatemala was faced early this year with organizing the general elections, and they were concerned about the threat of AI and deepfakes and how this can be creating disinformation. And so their concern was, what's going to happen when somebody comes to me, the electoral authority, and says, you used a fake document to tally the votes. This is the real document, and they show an image. How can you prove which document you used to calculate votes? So we helped the electoral tribunal create a solution called Simple Proof, which basically takes the digital fingerprint of a vote tally sheet that is filled out by hand by every voting table in the Guatemalan elections. So there are like 25,000 voting tables in Guatemala that are run by 5 volunteer citizens, and they actually tally the votes together with members of political parties, accredited members who are election observers, plus third-party election observers from international missions, and they tally up the votes in a tally sheet that's called document number 4, documento número 4. And so this is fed into a scanner. Typically, this goes into a vote counting system, a preliminary results transmission system. A lot of democracies have systems like this to show election results as close to real time as possible. But so what we did was we took that tally sheet image just as it was scanned. We took the hash, which could be interpreted as the digital fingerprint of the document. And this digital fingerprint was included inside a blockchain transaction, rendering it immutable, sort of written in perpetuity, because that's what this new blockchain technology enables us to sort of create carbon dating for digital information, something that was not possible until the advent of this technology. And so we were able to store this digital fingerprint of a document at a certain point in time, and that proves that this specific document that was used as input to calculate who wins the election, this document was time-stamped at a certain moment. So if somebody in the future comes out with an altered document, and I did it super easy in one of the generative AI systems, I fed a tally sheet into it, and you can't tell the difference. You can alter numbers, you can't tell the difference. But we can prove that the document was used by the election authorities to calculate who won the election. That document was generated at a certain point in time. And so this helped to refute some queries by different political parties, and it was praised by external election observation missions like the OAS and the EU Electoral Observation Mission. And so what ended up happening was even more interesting. What ended up happening was that since an anti-corruption candidate won the elections, people that wanted to maintain the status quo activated a network of corrupt individuals, judges, and prosecutors to try to overturn the election. They went as far as confiscating the physical tally sheets out of the electoral tribunal offices and taking them away, and therefore breaking the chain of custody for this sacred elections information. What these people didn't know at the time was that this information was already stored digitally in perpetuity inside the Bitcoin blockchain, so nobody could alter it. And so that made it impossible to alter the physical documents after the election and try to come up with a fraud narrative of something that didn't happen. And so that's just a use case of technology being this new technology being used to protect democracy. And another thing that it enabled was third-party election audits. So people, civil society organizations were consuming these documents, and they created a crowdsourcing service similar to a CAPTCHA, where you see a CAPTCHA to prove that you're not a robot, and so you click on what letters are this. They took the tally sheet documents and fed it into this CAPTCHA system and had an army of like 1,500 people on a mobile app selecting the numbers and helping actually tally, do this independent tallying of the votes and an independent audit. So I think there's a lot of space to improve election processes, and there are protocols such as open timestamps, the protocol that we use to safeguard information that can be very useful for elections in the future.
Thank you, Rafa. I think Rafa's example is something that I wanted to bring to the table because if we create coalition of people like Rafa, technology people, young people, and policymakers, we can make tremendous progress at actually safeguarding democracy. Because imagine if, for example, in places like my country, Venezuela, if we had technologies like Rafa, we would have been able to protect our democracy effectively. So I invite all of you to think about this type of framework in which you can put together technicians, young people, and policymakers to create these new tools. The next person I want to introduce is Meryl Miner. Meryl is basically the person leading IRI, International Republican Institute, the youth efforts that they're doing in many, many countries. So please, the floor is yours.
Hi everybody, Meryl Miner. I'm the Senior Manager for Youth and Inclusion at IRI based in Washington, D.C. and it's really great to be with you guys today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the youth work we do, but also the global perspective on youth and policymaking and youth and political engagement. So I really like the term you used earlier about kind of the geopolitical paradigm that we're facing, because I think that really is something that I see resonating more and more as time goes on. We're seeing now for the first time in a while that young people are really being targeted by authoritarian countries, and it's intentional, it's real, and it's something that needs to be thought about and thought through about why that's happening and how we can hedge it. Because obviously everyone here today, I'm assuming, are big democracy fans since we're at the summit for it. So one thing, and we've been doing actually some research thinking about why young people are possibly turning toward authoritarianism or even just being interested in discussing it, open to it. And actually one of those reasons is related to this policymaking question. The reason a lot of people have been saying, so we asked about 150 young people from across the world what their thoughts were on this topic. And a lot of them said that, first off, the people that they see in government don't look like them, they don't care about them or their needs. The government isn't raising the problems that they see in their daily life, like climate change, economic hardships, educational opportunities. They're not seeing those represented in their government by their policymakers. And then they also don't see young people themselves in there, so it's kind of a double whammy, if you will, excuse my term, but that's the reason that young people are saying, well, this China, Russia is coming here and they're offering me an opportunity to go on this fellowship, or they're offering me, they're saying that they can do kind of a quick fix with getting roads and a mall in my country. And that kind of seems like a better option than what democracy is offering. So it's really key that we, as young people in this room, but as people who are supporting democracy, think through ways that we can engage more young people in this policymaking conversation and get young people at the table meaningfully to ensure that we're kind of hedging this global paradigm, as you mentioned. So one way that we're doing that at IRI, and the way that's close to my heart, is our work with Generation Democracy. So that is our flagship youth network at IRI. It has around 300 young people from over 80 plus countries, and it's always growing. And Generation Democracy, as mentioned, is our flagship youth network, and it does a few different things to empower youth. One of the most interesting parts of the network, I think, and what I think makes it so special, is once you're in the network after you apply, you're in it for a really long, you're in it until you turn, I think, 36, basically. So what that means is we're with young people on their journey through the policymaking world, through their political world, going from kind of somebody who maybe is an intern in a political office all the way up to an MP. And in doing that, we're helping empower their journey with a network, skills, and a platform for them to build up their leadership. So the network piece, that is one of the key parts of Gen Dem, as mentioned. It's 300 young people from all over the world. And we really see that young people all over the world, from Guatemala to Malawi to Korea, all these places, young people face similar problems. They're facing issues that if they can talk with other people who maybe face the same issues, learn about their successes and failures in those other countries, they're able to replicate them or not replicate them in a meaningful way. So that is one of the most important things Gen Dem does, is really connect people to talk about what's working for them. And again, that's really important as people go through their journey as a politician or their journey as somebody in the government, to learn about those best practices, to learn what works and doesn't, so they're able to be effective once they get to the table. The next thing is skills. This is something I'd emphasize for when you're looking at kind of what we should be doing to help young leaders around the world get into the policymaking space and meaningfully engage once there, is thinking about what kind of soft skills we can provide people. I think a lot of times we see young people maybe go, they get their education, they have a course that is fine and dandy, but they don't have the soft skills for communication, for going and leading a group, for time management. So all of those different things are really, really important for young people to learn. And it means that once they have those, if they're able to, let's say, express themselves in a concrete, interesting manner, and they get their seat at the table finally, people are going to listen. Because one of the worst things you can do is put young people at the table, clear space for them, and then they don't have the skills or confidence to be able to actually meaningfully share what they're thinking. That actually sets back young people, I would say. And that's something we see around the world too, is this kind of tokenism idea. We're like, okay, we're going to invite a young person here, but we're not going to prepare them. We're just going to let them come to this meeting, and they're going to sit there quietly, and nothing's going to happen. So we don't want that to be what happens, and that's why we have things like a leadership lab. It's a yearly communications and soft skills training for our members. We offer regular trainings for them online as well that focus on these different ideas and communication best practices. And finally, the platform is another thing to think about, and what Gen Dem likes to do is really bring young people to different global activities, such as the Summit for Democracy. We have a small delegation here to be able to share out their voice, be able to share out what they've been doing in their own countries, related to policymaking, related to civil society and youth engagement, and use this kind of global space for them to engage and learn more from others as well. So you'll see us, we have a little booth over there, so check us out if you want to learn more about the Gen Dem program and kind of how we've used the S4D in particular as a platform for bringing young voices to the global stage. Other than that, I would say that IRI, just more broadly, for those who don't know, works in much more than just youth and inclusion. We do work all over the world with political parties, with civil society organizations, and I would just emphasize that we do different youth and policymaking programming as well. And it's again kind of looking for bringing youth to the table in a way that's meaningful. For example, we did some work in Kosovo, where we developed a youth and policymaking toolkit, which will actually become public in the next few months, so stay tuned, keep your eye on the website. But essentially looking in this circumstance to have political parties learn about why youth should be involved, and then listen to youth, map the things that they care about, and then think about ways that they can integrate them into their policymaking decisions. And that is a model we try to replicate around the world as well, in line with the idea of not only bringing young people to the table, but once they're there, empowering them with a voice, with the skills, and having people who are there to listen to them meaningfully to engage in the policymaking discussion moving forward. So that is it for me. Happy to answer any questions here or, as mentioned, at the booth that we have here.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you. I think what you said is completely true, like in the sense that young people, they don't feel represented, And you can see concrete examples. For example, in the Council of Europe, I don't know if you're aware, they're developing all these mechanisms, all these instruments for young people to be involved in policies. And however, in their same reports, what they mention are the priorities, are actually not the priorities of young people. Just to give you an example, in Europe, only 33% of young people believe that their governments are doing a good job in regards to the economy.
Yeah.
Only
I think
33%.
that's more than just Europe, unfortunately.
Right, but just to give you an example, and less than 30% believe that their governments are doing a good job on inflation. But then when you see all the protocols, when you see all the reports on youth from the Council of Europe, for instance, they never mention the issue of the economy. So this is a way, just a concrete example in which you see a complete difference between what young people actually believe, but what actually these instruments are trying to say. And what we need to do is we need to have young people actually writing this report, actually putting their input into this report. Because if we have parliamentarians who are close to retirement age writing these reports, then of course you will not have a change. So the next person I want to introduce is our friend Lee from the Human Rights Foundation. You are leading the North Korea desk from the Human Rights Foundation. HRF is doing unbelievable stuff in many of the autocratic countries. I'm very grateful for everything they have done, also the many collaborations. The Oslo Freedom Forum is always a great place that I love to go. So yeah, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Julian, and it's really nice to meet you here. And I'd like to thank those who are putting all together this wonderful the panel, and of course to the Republic of Korea for this wonderful opportunity. It's not rare, it's rare to have this kind of opportunity to hear the voices from Guatemala and listen from DC, and I myself also from North Korea as well originally. So something to share some different aspects and about this crucial topic. So I think that it's just sitting on this panel and thinking about these important aspects. Democracy sometimes it's a big concept, but sometimes too big, and on average for average people on the ground, it may not feel real sometimes, right? So what is real? The real in the sense that I remember it oftentimes when we talk about democracy, it reminds me of life I had back in North Korea. The country is one of the most isolated and repressive countries. They're thinking about the policies and changing it and raising your voice is an unfathomable concept. Most of the people, my fellows, including myself, we didn't know about the concept of human rights. Not because we didn't try to learn it, because we didn't know such concept exists. So it's kind of the one thing always when we talk about the assess the situation. Especially people who are established democracies, it's easy to take for granted things they already have. So I think we need to take it very seriously what's going on here in Asia. We see that in North Korea, of course, and Hong Kong, and we recently saw democratic died in countries like Afghanistan. I mean, in Russia, or in the living country, of course, the Guatemala, we see the Iran and Venezuela, Belarus, etc. So the Human Rights Foundation I'm working with, we focus on the supporting, empowering the activists in across the societies, could be from Hong Kong, China, and North Korea, the country I'm from. So he also noted that Oslo Freedom Forum, it's like many other civil society organizations. The role we play, the organization they play is such important, and sometimes the government cannot fill up. Let's face it. Sometimes government is reluctant to don't have the chance to step in, whether it's with regards to China, with regards to North Korea. So I think that I do think that there is, yes, it's important for government to increase the youth participation in policy making, but also there is areas government can do, which is either supporting civil society organizations to raise funding or making things environment more conducive to the NGOs operating in the area. So I think that's something I need to mention. And the other aspect is that it's something I believe that today and yesterday and in the next day there are so many policymakers and academics experts like this discussing it. I hope that we have some really innovative ideas how to really meaningfully move forward. And not just like talking, about the youth issues, not airtime about youth issues during the election season, but something that's really tangible to address the root causes of this issue. So I think the one thing the one important aspect, the bottom line of this is how to get more young folks involved in this policy making process. So I think that of course we didn't have time to talk about this more in detail, but I think one aspect we might think about is that in political science, these days talking about some very interesting concept, which is what they call deliberative participation, deliberative participation, which is the idea is basically combining representation and participation. Something like the idea is like creating a youth assembly, and it's like a third branch in Congress, or in Korean case, Korean National Assembly. Is playing as one part of the legislative body. They are playing, basically they're choosing the young people randomly, like a sample, basically. It's like jury duty, to represent particular the demographics, the voices. That's something it's something like you could think about, because that's a radical idea, but it may be feasibly you could set it up, this kind of a concept. It's to get the always it's not easy to people reflect the issues as they are ever changing on the ground. So it's something like you could think about. Of course, the technology we talked about, the platforms we talked about. There's a lot. They are opening up a lot, greater potentials. With greater opportunities, and so yeah, I'm excited. Looking forward to the further discussions.
Thank you. That's really interesting. Like basically proposing parallel institutions or complementary institutions, focus only on young people so they can be included in process.
Yeah. So it's like the concept is like as I alluded to that the early part that everyday young folks, they are not really into participating in politics on a daily basis. Maybe they are participating elections or local that community group. But it's not easy to think about. They're busy, leading their lives and think about politics every day. It may not be realistic. So if you do these kind of things, so everyone would allow everyone to get involved, and also outside the usual election circles, something like that.
Very interesting. Thank you. So our next speaker is Hsin-Tzu,
Yes.
a youth leader of the community of Democracy.
Yes.
So please tell us your story, and the floor is yours.
Sure. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Hsin-Tzu, coming from Taiwan. I'm probably the only participant from Taiwan in this Summit for Democracy. So it's interesting that I will be able to share this experience. Thank you for having me. And I'm the youth lead from Community of Democracy. So back in Taiwan, I'm deeply involved in civic engagement, voluntarily serving as a Deputy Executive Secretary for a project called Here I Stand Project. It's an organization dedicated to enhancing Taiwan's civic relations with other countries, using our strength to help others. It's our mission. In the Democracy Index 2023, released by Economics Intelligence Unit, Taiwan actually just retained its ranking of first in Asia in the Democracy Index, and it's ranked 10th globally. So, as a representative from a country that upholds democratic value heavily, I'm also very honored to discuss the representation and impact of youth in democracy. And I believe this is how I can contribute to this discussion is to share Taiwan's experience and our best practice in integrating youth into the policy-making process. So in Taiwan, youth who wish to advocate for certain issues typically begin with voluntary work in NGOs, which I believe is very similar in other countries. Those who demonstrate commitment often advance to leadership position within NGOs and gain the decision-making authority. Additionally, in Taiwan, which is very special, the selected NGO workers or leaders, they're also able to participate in government youth advisory committee. And it can foster direct engagement between civil society and governmental institutions. The youth advisory committees are run on the basis of both central and also in local governments, like regionally, in Taiwan. The government actively seek this input from our young citizens for policy consultation and collaborative proposal development. This youth advisory committee, for example, for Central Executive Yuan, it's running regularly since 2016. It ensures that the policy proposed by the youth committee members are continually tracked and followed up upon. The Youth Development Administration has also been implementing Youth Hub Let's Talk program since 2008. It is hosted annually, aiming to strengthen youth participation in policy formation through workshop or panel discussion or roundtable discussion. It aims to strengthen youth participation in policy for discussion on youth-related issues and strategies. It is actually used to be initiated and only activated by the government side, but through the time, nowadays the topics for decision now can be proposed proactively by the youth team. So it ensures autonomy and the relevance to the youth concern. The government actually allows the youth themselves to proactively propose the topic they want to talk about. So let's delve into the representation. How are the youth actually selected? Youth Advisory Committee are chosen through public recruitment for recommendation or recommendation with preference for individuals who have NGO or administrative experiences. This will ensure the representative have the practical knowledge and experience required to suggest a pragmatic solutions. So this kind of youth advisory committee, they interact with an administrative department in several ways. For example, the department often invite young committee members to their consultation meetings, and they encourage the young people to make proposals, act proactively, just as I mentioned. Furthermore, committee members, they initiate forms of interaction such as roundtable discussion in various venues, and they can choose the topic they want freely. So regarding how a policy is usually formed in this kind of policy-making process, it typically involves collaborative efforts with proposal progressing through endorsement stages and inter-ministerial dialogues. The executive department at this stage will preliminarily respond to the youth concern, and they also discuss where the specific obstacles are, and they also align their understanding differences. And they also would like to confirm the next step for a different ministry, just to be very practical and make sure it can really be realized. Even when there are occasions faced very much complexity or disagreement, proposals can also be ensured to elevate to Executive Yuan, the Premier, and to ensure the comprehensive consideration. So, in the event where there are more disagreement, and if it's about issue with many difficulty assigning responsibility to, like we are not sure who can be responsible for the issue the youth want to talk about, there are more or when there are more interdepartmental dialogues and communication needed, the proposal will also be sent to the Executive Yuan for the Premier to make a decision. Generally speaking, I would say it's not easy to realize a policy only through a single proposal or event like this. In practice, the Youth Advisory Committee uses multi-directional strategy to make sure its issue is likely to succeed, such as promoting dialogues between ministries and the public youth through roundtable discussion. In this way, they can easily narrow down the issue beforehand, and then they facilitate the proposal making after they have all the stakeholders involved in their research. So speaking of the influence and impact of the youth on policy, youth typically exerting greater influence on policy details rather than overarching frameworks. That is to say, actually, according to our practical experiences, it is very difficult for young people to determine the policy which involve the overall framework. However, if the overall framework of the policy has been decided in advance, the experience of young people in shaping the details of the policy will be influential, and it will be heard by the government and adopted. Now, I'd like to talk about the obstacle for this policy-making process to happen. The obstacle we usually encounter as youth are like the lack of experience is the biggest obstacle we face. Anything that involves, like, for example, budget planning, regulatory adjustment, and like disagreements in public opinion. This kind of obstacles are the things we usually face as youth because we are lack of experience. And however, based on our practical experience, if there are small issues, like if it's just an issue between the communication between department and the legislative body, it will still be possible to be resolved right on the side. So which means that our government really listen to the young people, and if the problem is within the government itself, that it can get resolved immediately. But if it also concerns the rest of the society, it will still take time for the stakeholder to align their ideas. So what I mentioned earlier was the experience of the government within the system. Our government institutionalized youth participation on the regulatory basis. But how about outside of the system? There are also countries who does not have the laws or rules for the youth to participate, like in the government within the system. I believe events outside the system further demonstrate the active participation of Taiwan's youth in democracy. I would say that youth still hold influence even if it's outside the system. And we focus on today's theme of the economic issue, which the distinguished speaker also talked about. It's more like the economic issue. I would say that a student movement called Sunflower Movement 10 years ago in Taiwan is a prime example of how the youth can really influence the economic policy making, even if it's out of the official system. So Sunflower Movement was one of the largest social movement in Taiwanese history, which began on March of 18, so it just had its 10th year anniversary yesterday. The movement was a reaction to the passage of the cross-trade service in trade agreement with China, which would have allowed for Chinese investment in Taiwan's service sector industry, making Taiwan subjective to China's influence. So it had a potential risk of losing our autonomy and sovereignty to China. That's why it sparked anger from all sectors of the society then, and especially among young people. The movement was led by student activists who occupied Taiwanese legislature directly for 23 days in protest against the China trade agreement. This occupation was supported by tens of thousands of people and they occupied the street and the legislature. I would say the result and impact was very successful. So the movement fundamentally altered the trajectory of Taiwan's economic policy and its relationship with China. It led to the stagnation of the trade agreement in the legislature, leading to a significant decrease in Taiwanese investment in China, and it increases the diversification of Taiwan's key supply chain. The movement saved Taiwan from potential economic risk of the pro-China economic agreement, and the policy was made by the then President Ma, who is very pro-China. A decade after, nowadays, the legacy of the Sunflower Movement is evident in Taiwan's continued awareness towards economic agreements with China. The movement's impact goes beyond the halted trade deal. In summary, the Sunflower Movement exemplify how young people, through their active participation and resistance, even if it's out of the system, out of the government, it can still significantly influence economic policy and shape the future direction of the nation's economy. And So in Taiwan, the youth participation in policy making is not solely a result of like collective measure or only based on official policy. It is deeply rooted in our nation's geopolitical context. As Taiwan faces unique challenges from China, the democratic spirit ingrained in the policymaking process serves as a collective expression of our identity and a safeguard of democratic freedoms against external threats like China. Despite challenges such as limited experience and conflicting opinions in the society from different stakeholders, we believe youth can still navigate obstacles and contribute meaningfully to the policy development and with dedication and effective communication. Based on what I delivered, we can see that Taiwan's experience shows our commitment in youth engagement in democracy a lot. As we gather here today to discuss the topic of youth representation in the policy making, I urge us to also broaden our perspective beyond national borders. As a Taiwanese citizen, I would like to highlight the importance of international democratic engagement for young people worldwide. Youth embodies the spirit of progressiveness and inclusivity. It also embodies values that are fundamental to the functioning of democratic society internationally. However, when it comes to participating in global decision-making process, our voices from Taiwan are often muffled by like China's interference. Despite our aspiration for the democratic representation, we find ourselves politically disadvantaged on many international stages. This is not just an issue for Taiwan, it is a concern for principles of democracy itself. International organizations must recognize the significance of ensuring equal participation for all nations, regardless of their size or geopolitical challenges. Excluding Taiwan from global policymaking undermines the very essence of democracy and perpetuates the injustice. So that I would like to call upon leaders of international institutes to have inclusion of Taiwan. But embracing the efforts of young people, we can work together to uphold the spirit of democracy genuinely by including Taiwan. So Taiwan is an integral part of global community, and Taiwan is ready to share our experiences of having youth included in the policy-making process. Taiwan is ready to share. Let us stand united in our commitment to fairness, equality, and democratic ideals that bind us all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your experience in Taiwan. Amazing experience, what you guys are doing in your country. So thank you. I appreciate it. And I think you are the clear example of something that Meryl was mentioning before, which is that this new paradigm, this new geopolitical paradigm in which we all are, in the sense that you mentioned that your position, geographical position, history is partially the reason that your young people are so motivated. And I think in the West, the woke-up call that we have had in the last year with the rise of autocratic regimes, with the connection of autocratic regimes, is something that needs to be a wake-up call for young people. I think that this old paradigm of the 1990s, that freedom will come automatically, and that progress was the end of history, and that we had to do nothing for that, but just to wait until progress and democracy arrives, it made a lot of damage to democracy. Because democracy is something that can be lost in just one generation or even faster. Democracy is something that people need to fight every day for it. So something that I would like to ask Meryl is, given your experience with young people trying to become leaders, because at IRI, you are recruiting leaders of tomorrow and people with tremendous potential. So something that I'm very interested is to know, what do you think are the major barriers for these young leaders to actually become policy leaders and influential people? Is more of a skill set, is more of financial capability, it is more legal and structural avenues. How we should understand this incapacity or this lack of young people involved in policies? Because I think the statistic is that overall around the world, there's only 2% of parliamentarians are less than 35 years old. I think in U.S. Congress people, 60% are over 60 years old. So how should we understand this issue and what type of specific initiative and policies we should propose on this?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things. One thing, thinking back to what you were noting, is that young people might not be interested in exactly what's going on. We all kind of said this, but it resonated with you were saying kind of maybe we need to have regular young people like in sort of a body to discuss what they care about. I think that that's kind of the first step is policymakers, oh, my pen broke, my apologies, okay. Policymakers thinking about what young people actually care about and thinking about how they can share that out to young people in a way that actually gets them engaged. A lot of us here obviously all care about politics or civil society, like that's why we're in Korea, why we flew here to be in this room. But we're not the norm, right? So our friends or the people that we talk to who don't care about policy or politics or civil society, people need to talk with them in a way that makes them interested and understand the importance of policymaking, importance of politics, and that's kind of step one, right? That's baseline. But from there, we need to look at, like I mentioned before, kind of the skills. I agree with you, all those are barriers. Skills, finances, legal and structural barriers, and each country is different, but has overlap. The key thing to me, again, is finding young, motivated leaders who want to be in this space, who want to listen to people, who want to make changes around the world. And I think once you find those individuals, which we try to do through our programs, as you noted, whether it be people signing up for Generation Democracy or our country programs, you equip them and empower them with what they need to be able to become leaders. And I think that again, varies. But the biggest thing to me is giving them skills and confidence comes one-on-one, comes hand in hand with skills. So giving people the skills to be able to communicate with policymakers, communicate with their peers, communicate with the community, to be able to elevate themselves in the conversation and their needs in the conversation, starts to break down those structural barriers. Financial barriers will always be a problem. I know from the United States, that's a huge thing for us at least, where to put out political ads, to have a team, to be able to create political events, you need millions of dollars, and young people don't have that on hand. You know, we're not all Donald Trump or somebody who has this possibly in their pocket or whatnot. But like it means that young people need to sometimes do a lot of groundwork, a lot of hustle to be able to get the finances they need. But again, that's really difficult. So in that same sense, it's just finding the right people and fostering them with these skills and motivating them as well to kind of stay in the game and to push forward even if things get tough.
Exactly. And Rafa, in Guatemala, how has been the participation of young people in this whole electoral issue? Have been also young people key in terms of advocating for your technology in Guatemala? What has been your experience with young people in all these crises that happened last year that, thanks to your technology, you guys were able to overcome?
So young people had a huge participation in the Guatemalan elections, and it's sort of the biggest constituency that voted for the elected president. It was an unprecedented example of youth getting involved and sort of tired of corruption and voting for a different alternative. Specifically in regards to our technology or what we were able to build, I was appalled by the response of young people who understand blockchain, who are passionate about Bitcoin and all these new emerging technologies. They made podcasts. For example, I saw, and these people, and this is people that I did not even know, people I had never heard about. They made a podcast, for example, called The Technology That Protects Our Votes. So I was very happy to see young people coming out and doing that, doing Twitter spaces, discussing how blockchain was an immutable technology and whatever was stored there could not be tampered or altered in the future. I listened in and I was like just blown away. I did not want to participate because we're not like involved politically, but it was just this enormous outpouring of seeing. I thought only nerds cared about this, nerds like me, but turns out there are a lot of nerds out there that care about how this works. And so I was surprised and very happy to see that. For example, a political party tried to alter one of the blockchain certificates and say that tally sheets had come in before the polling centers had closed, and they put that out on Twitter, and there was a flood of other Twitter messages refuting that and actually linking back to the blockchain verification page and demonstrating how whatever this political party had shown was indeed false. And so I think tools like this help young people get excited and involved in the elections process, which, as I said, underpins the legitimacy of the whole power in the Democratic Republic. So young people are used to seeing information in real time. They don't want to wait a couple weeks and see, who won the election. They want to see it in real time, but they also don't trust institutions. You see a trend of young people having less trust in institutions. They want to verify it for themselves. And this solution enables anyone who has an internet connection to verify against the Bitcoin blockchain and not have to trust whatever the news, whatever the media is saying, or whatever the government institutions are saying. They can check it for themselves. And so I think that's sort of, I was so very happy to see young people, and it was not old people. Young people were explaining how this worked to older people. And so I think it's very positive.
And I have a technical question also for you now that I'm thinking. Yesterday we had this ministerial conference here at the Summit for Democracy. We had foreign ministers, we have ministers of Interior, ministers of Digital and Technologies, and the main focus was artificial intelligence. The main focus was AI. Secretary Blinken, for example, was talking about the importance of addressing AI to advance democracy internationally. And a conversation that we were all talking was about AI and elections. Given that your technology was able to safeguard election, does it work also with AI, or what are your thoughts on AI?
I think AI is amazing. I think it's enabling people to have superpowers. With regards to elections, I think it can be used in a very bad way in order to sort of seed disinformation and create false information that seems real, as I said, or being disseminated by fake people who look real, right? All these deep fakes. And so I think in terms of our technology, what it does is it timestamps digital information. It enables an institution to timestamp these critical documents and prove in an irrefutable manner, protected by mathematics and thermodynamics, if blockchain stuff. And so it enables them to prove that a certain piece of digital information existed from a certain point in time into the future. And so if somebody generates deep fakes or creates altered tally sheets, in the example of Guatemala, the burden of proof is on them to show that that document really existed before the original document was created. It doesn't solve everything, but it reduces the attack surface of people creating fake information. For example, and this sort of came out from the previous election in Guatemala back in 2019, where the government was publishing tally sheets on their portal, on their website, and then they were being removed and published again, and there was some sketchy behavior going on there that just makes people not trust the process. Whereas now the information was getting published in real time with the additional backing of a blockchain timestamp, which proved that it was untamperable. So I think there was an evolution there. I think with AI, as I said, in the future, unless I'm standing in front of you, you won't be able to tell if I'm an AI or not, if I'm real or not. And so this blockchain timestamping combined with digital signatures is going to be a critical way to prove that a document is legitimate and came from a legitimate source.
Thank you, Rafa. And I also wanted to ask Lee about, you came from North Korea. Mm-hmm. You came from the closest country in the world, the most hermetic country in the world. So I'm very interested to know what is your thoughts about this whole dissatisfaction that young people have on democracy. Mm-hmm. What young people you think they get wrong about democracy, And similarly, what do you think leaders get wrong when they promote the blessings of democracy, the fruits of democracy? What are your thoughts on this, and how old were you when you came from North Korea?
So I lived in North Korea 24 years. Came to South Korea 2010. So to answer your question, democracy is ironically North Korean's official title is the Democratic Republic of Korea. Democratic. So it's irony. So it's important to distinguish what kind of democracy we are talking about. Of course, each country, each community has liberty, the way how we define the democracy. But it's important that fundamental values when it comes to the democracy, the fundamental that cannot be compromised, shouldn't be compromised, such as freedom of expression, human rights, and dignity of people, right? So it's a very interesting concept that just we heard the panelists from Taiwan, the sunflower movement, and strength young people's power in influencing policy changing. But it's very sadly, ironically, when I see that situation inside North Korea, it's really different. Of course, that there is a lot of pessimism going on in the country. Of course, it doesn't necessarily mean North Koreans are inherently, kind of inactive. They will have a history where young people rose up against the communist authorities. Its early stages, especially in 1948, when the World War II just came to end and North Korean regime was established. There were a lot of abuses by the Soviet Union, Red Armies, and North Korean communists, and they were uprising against the North Korean government. So, of course, they did the rest of the history. There's a lot of indoctrinations and cult of personality and the surveillance, etc. So that is what is seen today. But I think we need to stay always vigilant about that, the world we are living in, society we are living in. And it's so profound when you think about the democracy and the young people, empowering the young people, representing policies. North Koreans cannot think of that kind of concept. If you go to North Korea, whether you're a man and a woman, there is a military conscription, mandatory military service. Of course, some country has that kind of system. North Korea is unprecedented. North Korean men, if you're born as a man, you have to serve 10 years. 10 years your whole life in the military, and if you're a woman, up to 8 years. Do they receive any payments for? No. They are demanded everything they want, their lease, and including your very self are demanded for the service of the dictator king family. So that's all. So it's kind of interesting, in a free society like this, we can critically think about how to use technologies for this and that, and how can it change the policies for the betterment of the society. The regime doesn't allow the people that kind of room to think about. If you think about 10 years military service, where there is no internet, where there is no cell phone, you are subjected to constant propaganda, glorification of the regime, glorification of party, and evenness of the outside world, and you receive 10 years that kind of information. That's kind of the one way that this brutal regime controls the most dynamic part of the population. North Korea maintains, by the way, over 1 million standing army. So if you think about 2.5 million of entire population, 25 million population, over 1.3 million, around 1.3 million standing army, or somewhere age between 17 and up to 25 to 27. Most dynamic population are literally in the prison system. So it's like the inhumane nature of the system. But I also want to talk about others. It doesn't necessarily mean North Korea is completely North Koreans are unaware of the situation. They do. Especially after 1990s, we saw there was great famine between 1996 up to 1999, 3-4 years, up to 10% of the population starved to death. The situation we know that was after the Soviet Union collapse and Russian system didn't function. And what happened was that information, the contents, K-pop, we know Gangnam Style or all kind of things is creating, it affects the Korea too, North Korea, even that isolated country. So people started seeing, realizing, this is not exactly what we are taught to believe. It's not exactly true, actually. But that is something that's going on, and the regime now is trying to control, that people's mindset. A couple of years ago, they enacted a laws basically under which you face death penalty if you are caught for bringing information and disseminating people, your friends, and in your community. So it's a situation, but I do believe that at the end of the day, you cannot. If anything, history says the dictator cannot block the people's eyes forever, because the truth is truth. They cannot lie permanently. So I think that there is a hope. One day we discuss this kind of amazing topic in Pyongyang, in North Korea, with North Korean students, youth there. Yeah, that's my hope.
We will do that, and also in Caracas, in Venezuela, similarly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes, because
Indeed,
you're right. Like people want change. People they know the truth. They know what they want. I think it's our responsibility to find ways that we can turn this desire and willingness of change towards concrete reforms and revolutions.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Because something, and this will be like a topic of another panel, but the fact that all this sentiment for democracy has not been able to be turned into transitions to democracy in autocratic places, we need to then reevaluate and adjust what tools are we using and what the strategies are we using to actually bring democracy to autocracy. Because when was the last time that we had a successful transition from autocracy? It's very far. So that will be another thing that maybe for next summit we organize on this topic. I also wanted to ask you about something really interesting that you said. You said that the most effective way, or one of the effective ways to include and incorporate young people, was not to put them to develop the frameworks, but actually to develop the details within those frameworks. I would like you to elaborate on this, because I think it's a very important conceptual difference. And what do you mean by details? Do you mean about the specific objective of resolutions? Do you think it's specific issues? Can you please explain this?
Yeah, so in Taiwan, when youth involvement in policy making, it's really hard for them to just decide the big issue. Obviously, they get to suggest the topic to the government that this is the topic our young people want to talk about. But in the biggest direction is that the government already set up the direction. So it's usually the young people who have the frontline experience, like voluntarily, for example, regionally in their NGO, they have the field experience to suggest the government what to do. But whether the government can implement this kind of policy it will depend on the government's decision. So for example, if it's a topic about housing justice in Taiwan, the government will get to decide whether they really want to fix the issue. And if they really want to fix the issue, they can consult with the young people. And the young people can will get to decide the detail of the policy. That's the thing. And taking this advantage, I would also like to contribute more to the discussion, about digital tools. That in Taiwan we have very vibrant civic tech community, and there is a project called V Taiwan. It is a multi-stakeholder. It's a digital tool that allows multi-stakeholder to talk about their opinion freely through this online platform. It is also getting to integrate it with AI, and it has in cooperation with Chatham House based in London. It got a grand democratic input to AI from OpenAI. So it has a collaboration with OpenAI to develop more into the AI perspective. So it will be Taiwan will be very willing to share our experience, and this civic technology project are all the codes are all open source, and we will be very willing to share this kind of technology, this kind of digital tool to allow like young people to freely discuss their opinion online. And thus there are the design of the digital tool will allow the different stakeholders to align their opinion to find like the common ground of their different opinion. And this is a very special model, and unlike the normal like forum online, the digital AI tool will allow them to rearrange their opinion and find the common ground and reach the reach the consensus. And yeah, I got the flyer. Like if you are interested, you can feel free to get one of the flyer to know more about this digital tool called vTaiwan.
Thank you. And I'm now opening the floor also to your questions. What questions do you have? Feel free to do so. And yeah. Any questions for the panelists? No? Okay, so this ends the session then. I think that what we heard here are so interesting stories, from success stories like Taiwan, to countries like Venezuela or North Korea, who are completely closed to any kind of reform. We also heard about success stories of specific technologies, such as Rafa's technology safeguarding democracy in Guatemala. And we, of course, heard amazing projects, such as IRI, commitment to young people. And what I encourage all of you to do, and the people listening to us online, is that the time to defend democracy is not tomorrow, it's today. We are living in this new geopolitical paradigm in which autocratic regimes are on the march, are committed to destroy the way we live our life, in which autocratic regimes are working together. Russia, Iran, Venezuela, China, they're all working together to advance their diplomatic agenda, to close the freedom of their people in their countries, but also the freedom of people in democratic countries. They're working together to undermine the way we want to live our life. They're working together to spread disinformation. They're working together to destroy the economic tools of democratic world. So in order to overcome this situation, in order to save democracy globally in the next decade, we need to cooperate and we need to work together. We need to work together as people from different nations, that we may not share where we come from, we may not share religion, we may not share the type of food we like to eat, but we share the same vision for the future. We also need to cooperate from people from different expertise. I really believe that we need to bring together young leaders, industry experts, and policymakers. We need to come together so that we can develop these new tools for freedom. We need to find ways to overcome the failures of the last generation in turning countries from autocracies to democracies. And the way to do this is with new strategies, is with new technologies, and is with new visions on how we do things. We need to give financial tools to activists, to people. We need to give communication tools to activists and people. So that's why we are here. That's why we do what we will do, all of us from all organizations. So thank you very much for coming, and thank you for participating. Thank you.